program. I'm Siobhan Duvigneau and I'm your facilitator for today. Today actually marks the end of the series of videos and presentations that form part of our discussion topic over the last 3 days. We've been discussing themes related to researchers of the future, the types of capabilities and skills they may need in the 21st century. However, the online discussion we hope will continue on the HIFA-Fr and HIFA platforms over the coming weeks, and we would like to encourage you to join these discussions as they evolve. So back to today's presentation, we have some great program speakers for you today, exploring the topic, how would a shift in research practice impact on the capabilities of researchers in the future? So we're looking at exploring themes that look not least at the challenges of providing access to research evidence, but also looks at ways in which we can strengthen the capabilities of young and early career researchers in order to enable them to think critically and engage critically with the research that's available in the information landscape today. We'll also be looking at other areas which focus on the tools and approaches that can be used to exchange knowledge and share the research or discover it. We're also going to look at ways in which educational approaches could be improved to not only increase the learning outcomes, but also, as I say, to help shape those critical thinkers and reflective practitioners. And many of our speakers will be speaking to this theme today. Now, before we move on to the first presentation, I just want to highlight to those of you who may be new to the platform that you are more than welcome to raise your hand at any point during the presentation. There will be a small space at the end of each presentation to ask questions directly to the presenter. We'll probably allocate about 5 to 10 minutes at the end of each presentation. And you can indicate that you have a question by raising your hand. There's a small icon with an open hand, and if you could raise your hand at any point through the presentation, we will be aware and we will come to you at the end so that you can address your question to the speaker. So, moving on to our program today, I'm delighted to introduce our speakers. We have 5 speakers for you today, and they come from many of the leading capacity developers in development at the moment. We have speakers from INASP, from ITOCA, from BLDS at IDS, and we also have 2 speakers from the nutrition cluster, health and nutrition cluster in IDS. So let's commence with our presentations. Our first speaker is Sophie Marsden. She's the Program Manager and E-Learning Officer on a number of projects, one of which I believe is Arcade, but I'll hand over to you now, Sophie, so that you can begin your presentation.
Hi everybody, you should all now have my presentation on screen, I hope. So thanks for joining me today for this short presentation. As Siobhan said, my name's Sophie Marsden, and I work mainly on communications and e-learning at the Institute of Development Studies. Today I wanted to talk to you about how we can use digital technology to increase research capacity. I currently manage a project called Arcade, which aims to do just this in the field of health research. So I will be offering some examples of what we do in this project, and I will talk about some of the learning that has, that has emerged from the project. Okay, so I wanted to start with this image first. What does it say to you? It's taken from a video of a TEDx talk in Sydney a few years ago. It was used by a group presenting the world's first ever real-world trending engine called Mime is Thai. This technology takes snippets of conversations spoken by the live audience from the theatre using dozens of directional mics. It then generated an interactive visualization of the conversations that were happening in the theatre. It is basically bringing information to life through digital technology. If you'd like to hear more about this, there is a link in the corner of the slide which will take you to the presentation itself. To me, both the image and the product say a number of things. It captures the evolution of technology. It suggests how we use and engage with this technology, and perhaps most importantly, it indicates that the way we engage with information through these technologies is changing. So how can we apply this to the research? How do we use digital technology to access, develop and utilise research today? Of course, all the traditional sources and ways of accessing knowledge are still widely used. We still rely on books, journals and articles in print. We still visit libraries and universities to access this knowledge. But now, if you have a mobile device and an internet connection, you can access many of the same resources and many more online through one device, easily and at speed. New technologies have also put paid to the idea of desk-based research. No longer are you confined to finding information in a library or at a desk through a computer or from a book. Instead, you can access information anywhere and at any time, again, as long as you have a mobile device and an internet connection. You're also no longer confined to library opening hours, or if you're a student, you're not confined to time in class. Instead, you can access a wealth of information at a time that suits you. Digital technology and the internet have also dramatically increased the number of people that have access to information and research. The amount of people that own a mobile device, whether that be a mobile phone, a laptop or a tablet, has and is continuing to increase. When combined with an increased internet coverage, this means more information is available to more people. So when you combine these qualities that digital technologies have, how can we utilise them for increasing research capacity? Well, let me show you what we have done in the Arcade project. So just a little bit about the project first. There are actually two Arcade projects, both are regional capacity building programs and each with a health research focus. Arcade HSSR was based in Africa and the focus of the work was based on health systems, whilst Arcade RSDH is based in Asia and the research focuses on social determinants of health. Both were 4-year projects which were funded by the EU 7th Framework Programme. Arcade HSSR came to an end in March this year and Arcade RSDH will end at the end of this month. The projects included 16 partners in total across Asia, Africa and Europe, with Karolinska Institute in Sweden coordinating both projects. The main aim of the project was to use educational technologies to develop health research capacity across Asia and Africa. The main focus centred on teaching and training young researchers, and with this in mind we developed a suite of online learning courses, blended learning modules and joint teaching programmes for use primarily in the two regions. There was also a focus on institutional capacity development to support these teaching and learning initiatives. So this centred on strengthening the education services, the financial and administrative management, the research uptake capacity, and how people built and developed networks. So I'm now going to outline some of the products we have, and some of them are still in development as we finish for a November deadline. Okay, so all of our teaching content is hosted on either an institutional online learning platform or through the central open course repository. This is an online learning platform developed using Moodle software and hosted and managed centrally at the Karolinska Institute. All of the content that we offer is offered open access and has been released under a Creative Commons license. So this means it's free for anyone to use as long as they give appropriate credit to the original author and that they do not profit from using the content. The learning modules have been designed for both students and teachers with the idea that they can be used either for self-study or can be taught as part of a blended approach which combines face-to-face teaching within an institute and using the online content from the platform. the topics covered by the online learning modules was developed in line with a needs assessment that we carried out in the first year of both projects. So this identified the gaps in available teaching and research around the two broad areas of health systems and the social determinants of health, and from that we developed a curriculum of courses. Okay, so just very briefly, what's included in a learning module? Well, we've got video lectures, course overviews, presentation slides, reading lists, as well as online assessments and exercises, and links to additional relevant online content. One of the major successes of the Arcade project was the joint teaching programs that were established between regional partners. For example, Makerere University in Uganda, Stellenbosch University in South Africa, and Karolinska Institute in Sweden established a joint PhD program, so students were able to benefit from the research specialisms in both the faculty and teaching programs at each of the universities and receive a joint degree. We also developed shared teaching of blended courses across the institutes. So this meant that online teaching was shared across the partner institutes, enabling students from both institutes to benefit from the teaching. The online content and the OCR was crucial in enabling this blended learning approach, and whilst there were some teething issues, there was also a high level of engagement and positive feedback from the students. So Arcade was something of a test project in terms of using digital technology to create engaging e-learning content on health research. None of us would have professed to have been experts in this area, and I still think we wouldn't, because there's so much more to learn. But alongside online modules, IDS has experimented with using e-publishing software to create an online resource on implementation research on health systems. This has been edited and mainly authored by Dr. Henry Lucas, but it also includes contributions from experts in the field. And it's made up of 10 chapters, which guides a student through the basics of implementation research. So there are a number of qualities that the e-publishing software has that print publishing does not, which were behind our decisions to choose this format. Firstly, the software enables us to easily update the content, and we are also looking into creating a way that readers could contribute to the content. So this would be effectively like a wiki. Secondly, we are able to add multimedia such as video, audio, interactive figures and graphs and tables and online links to bring the content to life and add greater depth to the resource. Finally, the resource is downloadable by chapter and as a whole document. It's downloadable either as a PDF, which is obviously a smaller file size, allowing for those with low bandwidth to download the resource, especially if you're just choosing one chapter. Or it's also available in an EPUB 2 and EPUB 3 file format, which is a larger file size, but it means that you have much more variety in terms of the multimedia content that you can include. Okay, so another e-learning project that we are developing that aims to build professional skills, really, instead of the more topic-based academic online courses. So there are a series of how-to instructional videos. So these professional skills building sessions focus on things like communications, policy, research methodology. They're topics that can be sometimes neglected in the capacity building activities within the field of research. So we felt it was valuable to kind of add these short instructional videos to the kind of Arcade curriculum, if you like. We're still in the process of finalising these products, but we hope to produce instructional guides on Twitter, writing policy brief and blogs shortly, which will be shared via social media. Okay, so now I've talked you through a few of the products that we have created. I'd like to share some learning that we have generated from both of the Arcade projects. So if we take a look at some of the good points, what did digital technology offer to us? Digital technology and internet connectivity can and does increase access to a wider range of information and knowledge to more people. Within e-learning, for example, people in one country can access teaching content in another country, therefore having the potential to increase the amount of high-quality teaching available to a wider range of people. Within Arcade, we were able to teach across institutes, share expertise, and also share teaching resources. Digital technology also allows you to create new forms of engaging and interactive content. Many students responded positively to using online content in the teaching programs, and different formats can suit different students as they learn and engage with content differently. Instructional videos are now hugely popular online content now. You only have to look at the success of YouTube, for example. Producing this type of content for a research capacity building purpose is a new and innovative way to engage with the next generation of young researchers. Finally, connectivity. Digital technology allows you to connect through time and space boundaries, meaning that as long as you have an internet connection, you can engage with others and access online content at the click of a button. However, I would in no way suggest that technology will magically solve all of the research capacity building needs that exist. In fact, digital technology presents its own new set of challenges. The number of mobile phones surpassed the number of people on the planet in 2014. Gadgets like tablets, smartphones and not so smartphones are multiplying 5 times faster than we are, yet there still exists a digital divide. This is the gap between those that have access to information and communications technology and those that don't, or those that have a restricted access. This can instead have the reverse effect of reinforcing an information deficit. Bandwidth and connectivity issues are part of this digital divide. They are a common problem faced by research institutes and researchers in low and middle income countries. This was highlighted by some of the partners in Arcade, and these institutes had to invest both time and resources into developing their IT capacity and capabilities within their institute. The quality of e-learning content is increasing alongside the development of new technologies, as are the skills of those developing the content. However, just because teaching is made available online, this doesn't give any guarantees about the quality, the content, or the level of engagement that the materials generate. MOOCs, for example, have a particularly high dropout rate. So, overall, e-learning initiatives and approaches are still in their infancy, and their value needs to be tested and retested against traditional face-to-face teaching approaches. The same goes for using digital technologies for research capacity building exercises. It is clear that e-learning cannot and should not replace traditional face-to-face teaching, but there is added value to using online content. We concluded, for example, that a blended learning approach was most effective, which combines face-to-face teaching with online content. Okay, that's it from me. All that's left to say is a big thank you for watching, and if you're interested in any of the products or ideas I've talked about, please get in touch.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for a really informative presentation. This is the first time I've seen your outputs from the Arcade program, and I must say they're very exciting. I'm going to open the floor now, and I invite individuals to raise their hand and ask a question. I'm sure there may be, or I hope there may be questions out there that you're particularly interested in. While we wait, I was wondering, Sophie, whether you could elaborate for me. What we're experimenting with in particular in the Aura program is the use of videos, and as you alluded to in your presentation, the use of YouTube and the use of mobile phones maybe to access YouTube has meant that content is available to individuals in a way that it hasn't been before. But what we're noticing amongst our partners is that even though we make video content available, that at times this isn't something that they could take advantage of. And I was just wondering whether you talked about some of the challenges that you encountered in the program, or you called them teething issues. I just wondered whether you could comment on that and how you make the video content available in different formats, for instance as podcasts or transcripts, to enable people to access the information and still benefit from the learning.
Yeah, sure. Yes, there were teething issues. I say teething because I think we solved many of them. Some of the kind of main issues, especially when we were running the joint teaching programs across institutions, were around bandwidth and connectivity, as I mentioned. I mean, that's very difficult to solve. The server at an institute has a certain amount of bandwidth, so you can't get around that. But what you can do is make content available in formats that require less bandwidth. So obviously video does take a lot of, the file size is large and it takes a lot of bandwidth to play the videos. But we made sure that, say, for example, the lecture videos are also available in a PowerPoint format and also an audio podcast format, which meant that they were obviously smaller, had a smaller file size, and were more likely to play in low bandwidth settings. We also actually shared and downloaded material in institutes so that the materials could be used in live sessions without requiring bandwidth. Obviously this required some logistical arrangements, but we had a lot of kind of workshop sessions and consortium meetings where we could share content like that. So I think it was downloading the content and then uploading it to individual computers. So yeah, I mean, the other kind of issues around video that we came across were how long video content remains engaging for. For example, a teacher could give a 2-hour lecture in face-to-face, using a face-to-face approach, and that would still be engaging, obviously, because you'd be in the room. But on a video, you can't watch a video for 2 hours and just have slides in front of you. You just wouldn't stay engaged. So we basically broke up those long lectures into much shorter video lectures when they went online, and we found that the students responded much more positively to this.
That's fascinating, actually. Some really great tips there. Keep it short. And also, I really liked your idea of storing local copies of the videos to overcome the restrictions in bandwidth. So thank you very much, Sophie, for your presentation. There doesn't seem to be any questions from the floor, but I would encourage you all to contact Sophie, in particular around the ebook, which looks really interesting. When is the launch date for that, Sophie? Or has it been launched?
There is a version online, but we're trying to finalise the multimedia content. So we're going to be launching it in line with Health Systems Global, which is in November. So hopefully by summer.
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So moving on now, I'm just going to share my screen, or perhaps I won't actually, but we need to move on now to Linda Waldman. Thank you very much. She is a research fellow in the Health and Nutrition Cluster and also a colleague of Sophie Marsden, and I believe she is going to speak next. So over to you, Linda.
Hi, Linda. You might want to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hi, Linda. I'm afraid we can't hear you speaking, but we can see your presentation. Okay.
Just the speaker.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Excellent.
Welcome.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Linda.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So thank you for the introduction, and thank you very much for this opportunity to talk today. I'm also going to talk about how a shift in research practice can impact on the capabilities of researchers in the future. And I'm going to do this by focusing on two things. I'm going to talk firstly about an online course, which is one of the arcade courses that Sophie has just been talking about. And then secondly, I'm going to talk about some research being undertaken in Bangladesh. Both of these two examples are linked to digital technology and health. If I can move on to the next slide, that would be helpful. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so talking more about an online course, we decided to do a course entitled mHealth, Health Systems and Development. And we took this on as an opportunity to learn more about new technologies and what this might mean for research and teaching. So this course examines mHealth, which is really talking about mobile phones and other portable digital devices for health purposes. So it examines mHealth in relation to health systems and development. And it asks how mHealth fits into health systems in low and middle income countries, looking particularly at issues such as regulation, politics, policy, knowledge, gender relations, and so forth. And it tries to examine change and transition by trying to understand how innovation is being used and what pathways of change might be taking place. In producing this course, I wanted to bring together all my lecturing experience and bundle it into this course and use it to make this course a really good product. So we started off with 6 lectures, which is perhaps a small number of lectures, but we had reasons for doing this, including the fact that I wanted to make them as good as possible. And as Sophie has already mentioned, we quickly learned that we couldn't just film ourselves giving a lecture to our students and put it online. So my expectation in developing this course is that these core lectures will be the most utilized part of the course and will be the things that people turn to first and probably most often. But even though this is an online course and one which people will do independently and in self-study, I wanted to give it a feel of a university course. I wanted it to feel to people doing this course as though their lectures were embedded in other aspects of learning. And in order to do that, I tried to give as much complementary material as possible. So there are essential readings, there are additional readings structured around topics. There's a range of different kinds of exercises that people can do. There's some model answers, and there's some expert views linked to the course. And it remains an open-ended question how much these aspects of the course will be used or not. So why do this? Why do a course on mHealth? And why think about it in relation to our work? Well, as I said initially, I wanted to do this course partly for my own learning about capacity building and how new technologies can help us think about this. But there were other reasons as well. To start doing this course, I started by both looking at what mHealth courses were available online and doing a lot of online courses. And what I found was that a lot of the mHealth courses focused on the technology, on the mHealth intervention itself, or on information systems, informatics, how digital technology can help you generate information. Very few of these online courses examine questions relating to development issues, such as poverty, such as what low and middle income contexts might mean in relation to mHealth, such as questions of politics or power relations and things like that. And in addition, very few of these courses looked at sociological theory in relation to mHealth. So we wanted to bring to bear some of the sociology that underlies things like regulation, policy, behavioral change, gender, and knowledge. A lot of these kinds of things were largely absent from these courses, and really basic questions like whose knowledge counts, whose knowledge might be trusted, were not part of these courses. So that was our intent. In order to do this, we faced, or certainly I faced, a steep learning curve. We had to think about how to pitch a lecture. As Sophie suggested, we moved into 3 10-minute slots rather than a 2-hour marathon. I had to learn how to talk to an imaginary audience. We had to learn how to make the course widely acceptable. We had to learn about Creative Commons and copyright. I had to learn not to put too much text onto my PowerPoint slides. So we had a lot to learn as we went along. There were also a number of challenges that we had to face. I certainly underestimated the amount of work that was involved in producing a course like this. I also underestimated how hard it would be to get my colleagues to commit to an actual recording date. When you teach in real life, there are a lot of students and the lecture starts and you're forced to walk into the lecture room and give the lecture. When you set your schedule and plan a time to record a lecture, what we found was that many people cancelled and said, no, I can't do it this week, I'm not ready, maybe next week. So that was a real challenge for us. And there are still questions remaining about the revisions that we can do to the course and the lifespan of a course of this nature. We'll be testing the course next year, between February and March next year, and we're very excited to see how that turns out and what kind of feedback we get. And we're also already starting to explore how we might think about this course as a mobile phone course rather than a computer or internet course, in order to allow access to those people who use the mobile phone to access the internet. Underlying this course was a research project which really investigated how people used ICTs to find health information in Bangladesh. We were interested to know how poor people were changing their ways of trying to find health information because of this new digital landscape. And we were really interested to know if things like changing ICT infrastructure, changing access, changing policies might enable poor people to better access health information, and if they could find ways to do this. So this is a really complex issue, and it was one about which not much was known. So we chose to tackle it in a very interdisciplinary and mixed method way. So we had quantitative surveys, qualitative interviews and focus group discussions, we had transect walks, we had a range of other qualitative methods that we planned and used. We started, and it's also very interdisciplinary. So we have engineers on this project, anthropologists, nutritionists, doctors, and development specialists. And we do all work together in a very collaborative way. Now, the whole area of mHealth in Bangladesh and elsewhere is a very new emergent area for research. In Bangladesh, there's loads of projects that are coming on board. Projects such as Mama, which is for pregnant mothers, is very well known, where they receive health messages through their mobile phones. There's 6 different mobile phone companies, each of which has its own health helpline, and so each has its own mHealth aspect to it. There are lots of NGOs and other government initiatives and projects. So there are loads and loads of pilot projects. There are lots of very big ambitions, and there are lots of reports of very positive outcomes. So there's enormous potential and enormous opportunities for change in the mHealth environment. And that has very significant implications for poor people. And at the same time, there are a lot of gaps that exist in policy, in practice, and in social science research. And in our project, we wanted to try and explore some of these gaps in a little bit more detail. So we started off by trying to apply our holistic and analytical methods in this digital age. We started off by doing qualitative scoping studies. So we visited people and spoke to them in their homes, in their places of work. We spoke to key informant stakeholders and others about mobile phones. And we learned a lot. We learned, for example, as we were told frequently, that everyone in Bangladesh, even the beggars, have mobile phones. We were told, and we were constantly reminded, how strongly mHealth and digital health was being supported by the Bangladeshi government. So in these interviews with about 46 people, we explored all sorts of dynamics in relation to mobile phones. And that qualitative research, that scoping work, then fed into a survey, a quantitative survey of 2,500 odd people in urban, peri-urban, and rural areas. In doing that survey, we used digital technology to do the survey, and that was an amazing innovation for us. So the survey happened very, very quickly, and within a month we had early data available to us, much, much quicker than had we done the survey manually on paper and had to feed those results into the computers. As soon as a household was surveyed, we could already begin to see the data, and we could watch it coming in as the survey was being done. So that was really, really interesting and really helpful to us. And what we found doing the survey was that people were using multiple SIM cards. For some young men, up to 7 SIM cards, which they were using to manage different relationships and to take advantage of different offers being made by mobile phone companies. We found that people had an incredibly sophisticated knowledge of the costs and the contracts that they had and how to use their phones to make the best, to the best advantage. So we found that people were deliberately allowing their contracts to expire so that the mobile phone companies would give them a new special offer at discounted rates, things like that. So that was all really, really interesting. Having done that, we then did the survey to try and get a sense of what was happening quantitatively and how many people were using mobile phones for health information seeking. And we were really surprised by our survey results. We found that actually very, very few people were using their mobile phones for health information seeking. So that led us to go back to our research question and think about it again and to say, well, why is this? Why do we have so few people actually using their phones when our qualitative work seemed to suggest that people were very sophisticated about their phones? And we know that health and access to good health is a big issue in Bangladesh. So we then followed this up with additional research, trying to find out more. And in this additional research, we targeted very specific categories of people that we thought might be using their mobile phones differently. So we did another quantitative survey of 800 college students, and we did qualitative work with college students, with garment workers, with particular categories of people where we thought they might be using their phones in different kinds of ways. So in doing this research, we had a couple of challenges which are particularly interesting in relation to the question about digital technologies and how digital technologies can shape the capabilities of researchers in today's era. So the first was timeline challenges. Our first survey was done in 2012, and as I said, the results came in very, very quickly and we could see what was happening. And the digital world moves very fast. But academics don't move very fast. And despite all being very committed to this project and all working in an interdisciplinary way, it took us a long time to process the data and to move on from it. So in a sense, collecting the data was quick, but analyzing the data, making sense of it, and making decisions was a lot slower. And in part, that's because in an interdisciplinary project, we all only have small bits of time to work on the project, and that slows down our analysis. It also means that making comparisons between the first survey in 2012 and the second survey in 2015 are very difficult, given the rate of change in digital technology. We also faced challenges in how we asked our questions in relation to health information. So in the first survey, we asked people, and these are not the exact words, but the gist is, we asked people, do you use your mobile phone for health information seeking? And the answer was largely, no, we don't. When we did qualitative interviews with college students, we said, do you use your mobile phones for health information seeking? And again, the answer was largely no. But when we asked, do you use your mobile phones for sexual health information? The answer was more generally yes. And in the second qualitative phase of work, where we were doing interviews with young people, we asked them, what do you use your phone for? And the answer there was, we use it for skincare, we use it for diet, we use it for fitness. And that raises all sorts of questions about whether this is health information seeking, whether this is lifestyle and fashion. How do we consider and think about this kind of data in in digital technology? So there's a really big push nowadays to think about and to use and to analyze readily available digital data. But we're also very interested about data that is about how people use their digital devices. So I would warn us against being too seduced by what's available online, and to remember to focus on the users and think about why people are using digital technology and how. So we found in our research that people were using their phones very creatively. They weren't just using their phones to look up health information seeking, but rather they were using it to contact family members or other individuals who could help them make a personal connection to a doctor or a particular healthcare providers. Now, again, there's an awful lot known about the digital divide, and we could expect, and we did expect, to find that women were largely excluded from mobile phones. But actually, we found much more interesting things. We found that when we looked at older forms of technology, such as television health programs, that women were also the most excluded from that category of information. And we found a real distinction between younger women and older women, both in terms of mobile phone ownership, in terms of skill, and in terms of health information seeking. Now, generally, one assumes that one should be able to trust the healthcare provider, but what does this mean when the provider is online and when it's not obvious who this may be, or whether the information or the products being provided do or don't have medical and scientific justification? A lot of that is obscured when looking for information online. And what we found in Bangladesh is that most people tended to trust television adverts linked to health issues rather than online technology, because this was a source of information that they understood to be controlled by the government, and they trusted that the government wouldn't allow untrue information to be disseminated. So that was more trustful than ICTs and online searching. But what does it mean when we talk about trust and health information seeking, when we realize that most college students are getting their health information from social media sites like Facebook? And this health information is communicated through a system of likes and dislikes and news feeds, rather than through the conventional systems that we would expect in health and in health systems. So that's a very brief overview of what we've been doing and what I've been doing on this work. I really would like to thank the organizers. I really welcome this opportunity to share some of this research and online learning with all of you. And I would encourage all of those who are interested in this work and who would like to follow up to get in touch with us. So on the next slide, I'd just like to say thank you and give you my contact details. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Fascinating findings in your research. Can I just check, is that published yet, or is it still, is it halfway through the process? Where are you with your research activities currently?
Thanks, Siobhan. Some of it is published. We have one article published, and we're working on several others. So after this session, I can give you the reference to the one article we've published already, and hopefully we'll be able to share more later on.
Yes, thank you. That would be great. I should imagine that would be very interesting to our participants and others who are engaged in this conference. I'm opening the floor again for individuals to raise their hand and post or present questions. In the meantime, I had a couple of questions myself. You talked about the steep learning curve in developing educational outputs using technologies. I was just wondering, how long did it take you from start to finish to develop the composition of courseware that you worked on, roughly? Hello.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes.
That's a really interesting question. I think I'd say 8 months, maybe even a little bit longer, much longer than I had anticipated.
And how do you see it being different, if at all, when you move into a mobile environment?
Well, lots of things are going to affect it. One of the things that's really going to be different is how we present information, because it's got to be read on a really small screen. And we're also particularly interested in feature phones rather than smartphones at this point in time. And that raises questions about how you will read essential readings, for example. How are you going to present that kind of information? So we're busy exploring this and trying to come up with answers, but we haven't yet started to do that. We haven't yet come up with any answers.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's quite a challenge given that you're focusing on feature phones rather than smartphones. As
Yeah.
you're quite right, feature phones seem to be more prevalent in lower income and middle income countries, or even here in the UK. I'm always surprised that my housemate is still using what I would call a very early version of mobile technology, but he assures me it works well. And of course it is very robust. Um, just one final question actually that relates to the distinction that you observe between young and older users of technology. I wondered whether you could just unpack that for a moment and explain some of the distinctions in the things that you saw. I know that you talked about exclusions, but I was just also wondering whether there were any other patterns of behaviour or use that you observed.
Gosh, lots. We used 33 as our cutoff age between young and old, which was slightly randomly chosen. In our college student survey, we stopped that at about 24. In our overall survey, we used 33. And I think a lot more familiarity with young people with mobile phones, incredible versatility with using them. A lot of older women really only use mobile phones to make calls to, often they're in their natal families, their own parents and their own brothers, usually. We also found that young people very, very connected with Facebook. We interviewed some young men who had 300 Facebook connections, most of them people they actually knew. Again, we did interview older women who had a few Facebook connections, but far smaller numbers and far less intensive use of Facebook. I'm trying to think what some of the other differences were.
Oh, that's great, Linda. Thank you very much. I probably put you on the spot there, and it sounds like this is really deep dive, rich data that you're still working through in terms of identifying some significant patterns and behaviours. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the remaining research findings coming out later on. I'd like to thank you for your contribution today. Both you and Sophie were very informative and give us some food for thought on how to use technology to not only enrich but make our capacity development programs accessible and usable. I encourage our listeners to contact you both directly, and we'll make sure that your contact details are available on the learning management system, which we can provide details of at the end of today's webinar. But thank you very much, Linda. We're now moving on to our next conference speaker. And the next conference speaker today will be Nathan Bimbe. He's the Information Systems Manager here at IDS in their library, which is the British Library of Development Studies. Nathan is a technologist, and so it's useful to segue now from research projects and capacity development projects that are focused on providing access to learning materials. Nathan will talk about providing access to research evidence. So moving over to you now, Nathan, please do begin your presentation.
Sorry, can you hear me?
We certainly can. Please do go ahead.
Okay. All right. Okay. So basically, as the other panelists they've already mentioned, I think they've looked at more on the practical use of digital within scholarship in a sense. What I'm going to look at basically is trying to because I'm coming from the technologies, I'm trying to look at how is digital shaping or making these shifts that we are kind of looking at. I mean, the basic thing to look at now is digital is going to stay. We cannot run away from it. It's going to be there. But we need to be aware of which areas we can take advantage of within digital. So basically, my discussion is based on looking at the basic components of scholarship, and then how digital is helping to shift those, or rather extend those components of scholarships. At the end, I'll look at what we in BLDS are doing to play that role within IDS, as well as British Library for Development Studies for other practitioners and researchers out there. Just a quick recap. I thought it would be also best to look at these shifts based on the 4 functions of scholarship that were identified by Boyer in his influential book, Scholarship Reconsidered. If we look at these, there are 4 areas, which means discovery, that was the creation of new knowledge in a specific area of discipline. There is integration, application, and teaching, which of course is a central part for a lot of fellows and researchers. So to look at this, Scanlon identified some of these aspects, which I think they are coming on board now through mandates, although they are coming from the mandates of funders and as well as the open access movements. But ultimately, I think most of this is really just good research practice. So the biggest change that is happening right now is in the data. Data is now created easily, digitally, as we've heard from Linda, where they're using mobile to capture data. There's, storage is much easier, it's cheaper, and this actually enhances collaboration and sharing of research data. For example, in life sciences nowadays, research such as in genome and medicine, live data, being generated by instruments and other sensors can be analyzed very, very quickly, and new ways of creating medicines can be, made easier. So that is ultimately where digital is also affecting research. The biggest of all is in the open publication. We've all had, we've all come across open access, open publishing, and again, the other panelist, Sophie, mentioned that in terms of open education resources and the tools that they are using. So this is all happening within the confines of digital. What I'm trying to say here is digital is actually enabling this, these shifts, not necessarily that digital is changing the way research is done, but it's just that we're getting better, we're getting more efficiencies and effectiveness in the way we do research because of digital. But one thing that we have to worry about is also within the open access movement, within the open access, so many material is out there on the internet, and people need to find that material and make sense of it. So as you think, critical thinking, good analytical mind is still an important aspect for a researcher in the 21st century. We need to know how to filter information which is good. We know that there are, big data coming in. There is personalization, algorithmic, or being done by humans, but still researchers need to be able to know how to assess which material is good for them. Those skills will still be needed. We have also now digital has enabled open engagement. It has opened up networking, as others have mentioned. It's very easy to collaborate nowadays. So things are changing. So to cap it all then is then digital is actually has extended the four foundations of scholarship in a way that I've already talked about. This is meaning open data, sharing of information is easy, collaboration is now much easier, uh, publication, public engagement, and also educational resources. For this also to happen very easily, it is very important now as researchers, we need to be able to be integrated within the e-research frameworks or infrastructures. So that pertains to the implementation or having access to these infrastructure through, for example, researchers should have open researcher and contributor IDs, ORCID, very, very important. Digital objects identifiers are important for the outputs so that they are able to identify, because as digital is moving forward, there's so much information, machines will have to do a lot of that work for us. And therefore, linking these resources, linking these outputs to people, to funding, is very, very important and crucial. Therefore, having these kind of pieces of infrastructure put in place is also good. Discoverability is an important aspect. I mean, we have seen within IDS and BODS, for example, people don't find things by coming to the website or by coming to the library. They use Google. And for that to happen, they are librarians. I know people have said librarians are not supposed, you don't need a library anymore. You don't need librarians. But for Google to be very good at finding that information so that it's able to give you the right information, there are librarians behind the scene that can create good metadata, that are interoperable among those systems. So that is very, 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 very crucial. There is also, just to mention also, better abstracts nowadays, because research is now found via these kind of third-party tools. We need to be able to write good generic, so to speak, abstracts that allows these systems to be able to index the material very, very, very well. There is an interesting observation from Google Scholar that they found that young researchers nowadays, coming from the digital age, they start their search through Google. So therefore, when we look at what we publish in terms of articles, an article nowadays is a standalone entity. A journal is just now considered just a container, which it was supposed to be. So therefore, people now search for an article first, find it on Google Scholar or any other third party, then they look at who wrote that article. Then before that, where was it published? Unlike the way it used to be, where you say, I'm going to look for this journal and then find the articles. So it's kind of different. So as we produce this material, we need to be very, very, wary of these kind of changes that are taking place. So what are the tools that researcher has at their disposal? I haven't listed the tools here. There is a King as a lot of those listed. There are links in the presentation that you can look at. But what I've done is kind of captured the kind of areas that these digital tools are falling into. These are finding and curating information, data analysis, online collaboration, idea sharing, funding opportunities and policies. These are some of the areas that Sophie and Linda have also mentioned. So basically, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. So how is BODS playing a role? Within BODS, we are a library. We have a catalog, we have a website, we have a repository. We believe that users needs to be able to put their publication somewhere where it can be found in various spaces. We provide those facilities. We also have a library catalog. We are considered to have a biggest collection of development research. So if people don't have ability to come to the library, we offer document delivery service, which is operated based on the Research for Life kind of arrangement. So if you're from developing country, you can access anything that we have in the library via digital delivery mechanism, whether it's print or digital. Going forward within BODS, we are hoping to streamline all these systems or platforms and based on our learning to provide a more holistic or coherent kind of service, which we've termed Global Library for Development Studies. Anyway, I've called global just what is really, really global in its sense. But the basic line that we are thinking is we believe that a user who searches or discovers content will ultimately want to have access to that content. So not only just the center of the knowledge, we want to fulfill that capability. So if you find something, we'll deliver it to you, whether you found it as it's a print or whether it's digital, we'll try to provide that. So we'll work across the whole basic supply as well as demand side of research. These are the references. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Nathan. That's a very interesting overview of not only the definitions of open and digital scholarship as defined by Boyer, but also an introduction to the BLDS suite of services. I thought maybe perhaps this would be a great opportunity for you to talk a bit more about the digital library and your links to institutions in different parts of the world. Perhaps you could say a little bit more about that, Nathan.
Thank you very much, Vaughan. The repository that we have, it's actually in two parts. One is we curate material that comes from developing countries. Those are the things that we have in the library. But we're also working with other partners that want to have their publications on our system, which we call the BODS Digital Library. Through that, we do it via three kind of ways. One is digitization, because we are more interested in the material that is old, that's still in print, because we think that born digital material is already out there somewhere, but we're trying to cover the gaps where the print materials that needs to be transformed into digital as we move into the digital age. So for that, we are actually providing a space for where this material can be put if they don't have a space to put them in. We are helping them with also training, digitization equipment, software, and a little bit of costs to cover the cost of someone who is going to digitize and upload that material. We are also taking in born digital, but this has to be things that we think are, conform to our acquisition policies. The other part is also we are getting material via harvesting, provided the partner has an OAI compliant system that we can help with. So what are the advantages of doing that? We found that when we started originally, the program was to just digitize the material that we have in BODS. So what we did was we contacted the publishers where we could find them so that we could get Creative Commons licenses and permissions to digitize and put them online, but also provide them with the digital copies that we had so that they can put them on their website. During that period, what we saw was that actually some partners were now saying, well, what about the material that we already have? We have our own repository, but we also want this material to be on your repository. So that tells us that there was that need to do that. The reason being that it's about availability. I think within IDS, we have enough bandwidth to make our systems, our services available, or throughout 24/7. The other part is also to do with alignment, brand alignment to IDS. IDS is a known brand within development arena, and we are ranked very highly on Google and Google Scholar. So anything that is in that actually gets the high hits on that one. The other one is also as IDS being an academic institution, we've been verified by Google Scholar. So everything that is in our digital library, digital repository is actually indexed by Google Scholar. So that gives that capabilities. In terms of our observation on numbers, we see that when we compare the download statistics of the material between the IDS material as well as the material that is coming from the southern, our partners, we see that a lot of downloads are coming from from the developing South, actually, more accessing the material in that area than accessing the material from the IDS repository. So that tells us that actually research within the developing South actually is being consumed in some way. The only problem is that it's not visible. So this is one way we are contributing to that visibility.
That sounds fascinating. So to take Boyer's definition of open scholarship, you're harnessing the networks of IDS to not only link to the publications and research of institutions located across the world, but you're curating that content, making seamless access to it so that it can be discovered and used not only within that country but other countries as well. Now I have some comments, Nathan, for you from the attendees. And Stephen Nyanganga, sorry, I probably said that wrong, do apologise, Stephen. He's from Strathmore University and he says, thanks Nathan, this is very interesting. Critical thinking and analytical skills are needed, and we need to look at Boyer in a very new way. Now what he thinks is BLDS is a fantastic idea and he hopes his librarians are watching. And of course we can make that content available to them. But his question is, how does he manage to help the researchers to move to this platform? He says his team find it difficult to adopt to new digital technologies, and how can he get the library from Africa either into the platform or embracing these newer technologies? Perhaps you have some insights based on your encounters and partnerships with other institutions in that context.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I mean, the first thing to say is really changing behavior of researchers using or depositing materials in digital repositories has always been a very, very difficult one to do. I mean, people have used mandatory deposits or optional deposit, forcing people to use that. It's been very, very, it's been, received with mixed success here and there. In IDS, when we started, it was also difficult for us. That's why even our policy came after we had set up the system. But now we see that it's got a lot of traction. One of the things that we've done basically is to be very transparent in terms of showing impact, really not impact as to the final use of the material, but it's more on download figures. So we are very transparent on that. So each item, we you know, any user will see how many they've been downloaded, which countries their downloaders are coming from. That has helped us as well. Coming from that also is that now within IDS, all open access material now goes into the repository. But we've got automated mechanisms to feed this material in other spaces, for example, IDS website and others. So if you're on IDS website, you find a research paper. When you download, you're actually downloading from our repository rather than from the website, although you don't see the repository. That way also has helped a lot. In terms of helping set up these systems, from my work in Africa, what we've found, even HIFA found, is that there's a problem with skills. I think skills are a bit of a problem. There was the first wave of repositories that were set up in these developing countries, but they were not set up very well. And as a result, upgrading to take advantage of newer capabilities of repository in terms of interoperability. Because when you think about it, when we talk about e-research infrastructure, a single repository is actually no good, but interlinked repositories is the way to go, because no single entity can provide all the resources they need. So interoperability of these systems is very, very important. So therefore, new technologies have come aboard, new standards, and that has been a problem. But I would say that within BLDS, we've got the capabilities, and we are working in that area. So if the team needs help on how to go about this, we are happy to do that, to help in that area.
Thank you, that's great. And we also have a question from Maria, and I think you've partly answered this. She's asking whether BLDS can be accessible anywhere in the world, and the answer is yes. And is it for free? Well, it depends on your country status, their economic, I think it's GDP status, but perhaps you can clarify, Nathan. And she's also asking, can we send our work to them directly? So it looks like there are lots of questions in relation to engaging with the BLDS platform, and certainly in the case of our attendees, we can put you in touch with Nathan, although his contact details are on the screen now. If you're an Aura program partner, of course, we can facilitate that for you. Nathan is one of my colleagues. So I just want to say thank you, Nathan. We've run out of time and we need to move on to our next speaker.
You're welcome.
A very informative discussion and lots of interest from the floor. So moving on now with today's presentations, we've segued into the theme of discoverability, integration, networking, and now we've just heard from BLDS, and now we're going to bring in our other partner from INASP. Their speaker is Anne Powell, and she's going to introduce you to INASP's suite of programs and services that enable access and discoverability of research evidence. So over to you, Anne. Thank you very much for presenting today.
Thank you very much, Siobhan, and it really seems like the presentations are flowing on very neatly, so well organized. Thank you. To start out then, who are we at INASP? We're an international charity. We work with this global network of partners, improving various aspects around the research information sector. So access to information, production of information, touching on, I think, some of the questions that have just been asked actually, the communication and use of research information, and all with the prime motive that we want countries to be able to solve their own development challenges. Knowing that their researchers have the skills to do so, we are providing the support that might help with that. Nathan, we do also believe that librarians have ongoing role here. So as we look into how we support and connect the research systems, we work with librarians for the acquisition of the latest online scholarly literature and also the means of managing it as we move into different platforms, different technologies. Again, as was mentioned in the earlier presentations, the IT is really important. So we've been working with IT staff on how to maintain access to the research literature. Then interesting projects with researchers on how to use literature to support their own research, but also the production of, and communication of research. With editors to increase the impact of their journals, and then really importantly for development, with policymakers to make use of scientific evidence in their policy making. So our foundation for research really is around the access to research literature. So we've been working for a number of years with publishers to enable this affordable access, really important that the countries are able to afford if their price is involved, but also really important that access becomes sustainable, that we're not in a situation where there's access short term, researchers get used to the information and then find it's gone missing. So we've been working on what we call INAS principles, which the hashtag is there, you can follow those principles, are guidelines for publishers on how to work with developing country markets, developing country libraries to offer access that is affordable and sustainable. We've also been working to support the organisational development of library consortia so that they are able to take over from INASP in securing and managing access on behalf of their member institutions. As I'll mention a little bit later on, sustainability is one of the really important features of all of our work. So library consortia seem the sustainable route to enable access. Access needs to be supported by librarians, so we've run a number of training workshops, and Siobhan has kindly been involved in a lot of those, to help librarians develop the skills to manage access within their institutions. We realise that there are a number of different routes by which access might be available through our own work, but glad to see blessing on the system as well, so through Research for Life. Nathan has just mentioned HIFA-Fr. A lot of publishers have their own initiatives, and of course open access is really important in getting access out to the researchers who need it. So what are we trying to do around our access work? We were aiming to see publishers who are openly committed to the supply of literature to support development. And again, this comes out through our publisher principles and through an initiative called Publishers for Development, where we work with the publishers to understand the country context, to value the consortia, to realize that slow and steady is the way to work with the countries. We're working with consortia so that they can respond to publishers in a business-like manner and report then back on publisher commitment that they're offering realistic prices, that the publishers work through the consortium, and that they're going to share any changes that they want to make well in advance. All of this with the final aim that researchers have access to the content that they need. Once researchers have access to the right research literature, we've set a bit of a scene towards an enabling environment for research to take place. So we then help the researchers to make sure that their work can be published and become visible. So two of our programs work in this, Author Aid and the Journals Online project, which goes beyond just having the work published and visible to actually addressing the quality of the journals in which the research is being published. So Author Aid is supporting developing country researchers in writing up and publishing their work. And as with our lovely little jigsaw here, it comes in a number of ways. their training workshops, which we'll mention again a little bit later in the presentation, networking, bringing particularly early career researchers into a situation where they can attend conferences, various grants which either support research projects or again support the attendance at conferences, mentoring, which is extremely important in that we can match up early career researchers with late or mid-career researchers for a whole range of skills and help that comes in. A fantastic website that AuthorAid runs with loads of resources that assist researchers, and then a free editing service so that researchers wanting to have their research published can be sure it's actually been checked. And we have a lovely quotation here from someone who was assisted through AuthorAid, got started in his science writing, and then found he was having his papers accepted, and he's been able to publish articles, obviously therefore furthering his career. And AuthorAid has, I can't quite say littered, but a certain good coverage of quotations like this where there's been good use of their resources. Journals online projects, again I think answering possibly some of that question from Strathmore as well, assist with the publication of local journals, which of course mainly come out of universities. They have an online platform. We have the journal quality workshops which assist the journals to actually improve the quality of the journals. AuthorAid works on the quality of articles, but the JOLS projects work on the quality of the journals themselves. Again, with the question of sustainability that we're handing over to local management, I think AJOL is a well-known name, the African Journals Online, which is managed out of South Africa, but we also have Journals Online projects in a number of Asian and Latin American countries, where it's really done a lot of work as well to increase the visibility of these journals. Then we have our evidence-informed policy-making program, which takes the research that has now been produced and strengthens the capacity of policymakers as well as practitioners to use the evidence that's coming through the research. So the overall object of our evidence-informed policy-making EIPM team is to make sure that evidence is used in policy and practice by stimulating the demand from policymakers for evidence. That can be done in part by strengthening links between researchers and policymakers, and also by strengthening the capacities to use research evidence in developing policies. One of their projects has been the VACA-YICO Consortium, which is working in several countries across Africa to build the capacity of policymakers to access, evaluate, and use evidence. Our belief is that research should be used to inform policy, and for this to happen, the individuals concerned need skills. Skills in accessing information which may come from libraries, but in many cases for research and policymakers doesn't necessarily come straight out of the published research literature. They need to be able to evaluate the materials, to be able to confirm the difference between quality research information and opinion pieces, and then to be able to use that research evidence as they formulate the policies. So we're also working with policy-making departments to develop the processes for handling research information, and have had some great success with science cafes and other projects that have worked in the wider enabling environment just to bring in engaged citizens so that again we can have a demand for research information. So running as a thread through all of the program areas and all of the work we do are our approaches, that we look to find ways that work, realizing that each country is going to have different needs, different approaches. We are flexible, but we're in a really fortunate position in being able to have an overview, particularly of the partner countries that are listed there, but generally we can get an overview and tailor our approaches then to what is needed by the countries. Sustainability. And for sustainability, one of our key features at the moment is embedding support in local organizations or local structures. The area I work in and therefore most familiar with are the library consortia, but we also do the same activities in the national research and education networks, in institutions through AuthorAid, and with the research councils and policy institutes. And while I'm most familiar with the library consortia, we use a very similar process for any of these bodies, helping them to identify their current and future needs, developing organizational strategies, and planning for their own long-term future. As I think all of our presentations have said before, the reach through online learning has been really important to us. And again, we've got quotations from AuthorAid, but we're doing online work in a lot more of our areas now, just to have something that scales up, that reaches a large number of people, but also for our legacy, that as we feel that our work comes to an end in a country and that it's sustainable, there is that legacy still of the online learning. And all of this comes to our end that countries are equipped to solve their own development challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne, for a very interesting and quick race through INAF's portfolio, because I know that you haven't really taken a deep dive. INAF are providing a breadth of extremely useful services to the researcher as well as library consortia. And I think my ears pricked up when I certainly heard that AuthorAid support the development of publications by providing peer reviews, and I know that that is of interest in particular to our partner institutions. So just a quick note here, Anne, if I wanted as a researcher to get involved with the AuthorAid program, how would I go about that?
Okay, it would be largely going through their website, authoraid.info. There are a whole range of tools there, tools you can use, but you can also sign up as either a mentor or a mentee. And they've got what we fairly lightly in the office call the dating service, where you can match up anything that you're requiring out of a mentoring relationship, and generally someone will step forward to offer that. So it could be exactly as you're saying, how to go through the peer review process, how to react when you get comments back on peer review is one of the biggest things, because as a new researcher you're often fairly disappointed if you get a lot of comments back on your first peer-reviewed article. But working with a mentor, you can see exactly how constructive this is to have the comments back. So it could be someone who will talk you through the peer review process and the comments that you've had back. It could be someone who just helps you to decide on a research topic. It can go down to the extent of co-authoring papers. So if you have a look through the AuthorAid website, sign up, join in, join a discussion list. There's a blog which comes out with at least once a week a series of tips and hints. And though I would say the mentoring system is probably the most in-depth support that you get out of AuthorAid. And all totally free, totally available anywhere in the world. The access is generally in the countries that are listed there. AuthorAid is completely global.
That's fantastic. I was going to come on to the point that you're very good in providing Creative Commons open access to all of your materials and your research as well. So I'm pretty sure people will know about you, but it's very important to keep reinforcing or emphasizing your role in strengthening the sector. Thank you very much, Anne, for being one of our panelists today, and as well at short notice. So we really appreciate your presentation today. Now, moving on to our colleague, she's one of our learning partners, she's one of our consortium partners in the AURA program. Her name is Blessing Chatera Mawere, and I always say that wrong, so please do listen out for her pronunciation. She's the Deputy Director of Teaching and Research at ITOCA, which stands for the Information Training and Outreach Centre for Africa. And she will be presenting in a moment on how to get the best research literature from your searches, drawing, I hope, on the Research for Life material and databases. So over to you, Blessing, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you for the introduction, and welcome everyone. I hope we are all fully engaged and enjoying the conference as much as I am. This afternoon I'm going to be talking about how to actually get the best research literature for your search. ITOCA as an organization is an African-based NGO which aims at building the capacity of researchers in the areas of agriculture, health and environment, and working among several programs including AURA, as mentioned by Siobhan. But this afternoon I'm going to look at some of the different levels of literacy, and specifically looking at how we can maximize or get the best results from our searches. And I'll end up with using an example from one of our partner programs that we support called Research for Life. And this has been alluded to earlier by Anne Powell, who is also working with another organization that we also support. Okay, this afternoon I'm going to talk about literacy in itself. There are actually different levels of literacy, as you might all know. Alphabetic literacy, which refers basically to writing your name; functional literacy, which is the reading and writing; social literacy, and we're moving on now into more information literacy, which really looks at critical location, evaluation, use of information, and as well as production of information or knowledge after the final level stage. And we are moving more into digital information literacy, which is an area that we hope that most of our researchers get the skills and develop to the level that they need, especially now as we move on to the 21st century research focus. And this afternoon I'm going to look at how we actually get the literature and how we move from information literacy and perhaps into digital information literacy. So when we talk about digital information literacy, we're talking about how we apply information literacy in the digital environment. So it's got a whole lot of other levels, and some of them have been alluded to by an earlier speaker, I think it was Nason, looking at what digital literacies one might need to actually make full use of those different functionalities or digital innovations that we now find that enable us to do our research much better. Most of the time when we do our searches, we get a lot of problems, and most people actually think that most of our databases are not functional or are not working in the way that they should. But most of the time, it could be just a lack of planning or lack of understanding of how to go about to do your search. Most of the time, it could be also that people get too many results, too little results, or they get confused with synonyms, plurals, spelling variations, and so forth. So as a result, we get people, our researchers, getting very frustrated when they're doing their literature searching, and most of the time we end up using literature that we actually do not need to use, or that is not very appropriate for our research. So we really need to understand how to get the best literature when we do our research. And the first function or the first stage that we all need to have is to really understand or define our information. So do we really understand what we're looking for? And how do we know the information landscape? And do we know really if we are looking in the right place? So we need to plot terms associated with the domain topics, identify gaps in our knowledge, and this can be achieved using various methods. Today I've only listed 3 of these methods that we normally include in our information literacy courses, and I'm going to talk about mind maps, concept clustering, tree structures. These methods or tools that we have help us in defining our focus of attention or mapping out a way to enable us to come up with what we call search strategies. It enables us also to plot broad subjects or subject terms and ensure that we do not miss the right literature that is relevant to our research. Here I've got an example of a mind map. So what is a mind map? A mind map is a tool that enables you to broaden your search and think beyond what your topic might just have, the keywords that might be on your topic. So a mind map is a tool that enables you now to come up with keywords that you'll be able to use in your search. Those keywords are most likely what will enable you to get the right literature beyond searching for keywords that are on your topic, and those keywords will enable you to even broaden your thinking also into other aspects that could fit into your research topic. Another tool that we have is what we call concept clustering. Concept clustering is an easy tool that enables us to break down our topic into different main concepts and then now begin adding concepts that relate to the main concept. In this example that I have, I've got 4 different concepts, and within each concept, it does not always follow that a main concept needs to have other secondary concepts attached to it. But this again enables us to come up with keywords that we can use in our literature searching. The third tool that we have today is tree structures. In this example, we've got a topic that was related to health, water health, and its relation to water pollution, specifically in Kenya. In tree structures, we begin now to break down related concepts or keywords from the main concept. In this example, we've got health, water pollution, and Kenya is the main concepts or the main keywords, and then we break down and put in related concepts or ideas for each of those. This enables us again to get our main keywords or main thinking of what relates to our topic, and it enables us again to come up with our search strategy that will enable us to get the right literature that's relevant to our search. However, when we get to a stage when we've got these keywords or main concepts and we've broadened our thinking, we need to know how to now speak to the databases. The example that I always use is that if you come, for example, to South Africa, and South Africa being mainly an English and Afrikaans country, and you use another language to somebody who's not fluent, let's say in French, they would not be able to help you. So this is the same way that we talk to databases. We need to know how to talk to them in a way that they understand. And to do this, we've got different tools to refine our searches. I've listed here some of these tools that we normally use as we look at information literacy skills. One of the tools is Boolean operators. This is a tool that enables you to combine your keywords or refine your keywords to make sure that you are talking to the database in a way that it understands. So in other words, I'm saying that we use the Boolean operators in between our keywords. I will show you an example in a practical search that I have done later on. We can also use truncation or wildcards. These enable us to get the right literature, which we might not get, especially when we take into consideration aspects of synonyms or spelling variations. Some use the American spelling variations, some use the British spelling variations. In this example that I've put, we could have a root word for politics. So if you truncate on C, you might get articles for politics, political, and so forth. The same thing with the other example for organization. Another tool that we might also use is phrase searching. Phrase searching enables us to combine our keywords such that the database knows that we are looking specifically for that specific phrase and not for the two words separated. We can also use proximity searches where we actually want to search. This is especially useful in searching for terms that are related. So if you want two specific keywords that are related, you could also use proximity searches. These tools do help us to make sure that we are talking to the database in a way that it understands. For more information on how to use these tools, you can always get in touch with me. I've only highlighted them and not really gone into detail, and I'll elaborate some of the tools as we go along into a specific example. Another thing to note is that we need to also know what we call controlled vocabulary. So controlled vocabulary is the vocabulary that is mostly used by librarians or indexers when they are uploading content onto certain databases. So this is also important to note. I'll show you an example in the practical search that I've done late in a few minutes. So really we need to know our subject specialized databases. So in other words, most of the time, I heard one of the speakers say that most of their researchers rely on Google, for example, and Google is really a search engine. But if you're a subject specialist or a researcher in a specific area, you need to know your subject database. And today I'm going to give you an example of one specialized subject database. We need to know what a database is versus a portal, for example, versus a website, a search engine, a citation index, or even a content management system. Because remember, if we look for literature in the wrong space, we also get wrong literature. Today I'm going to introduce us to Research for Life, and alluded to Research for Life as being one of their partners at INASP. Research for Life is a program that we also support here at Itoka, and we support it by providing marketing, outreach and training for it across sub-Saharan Africa. Research for Life in itself is a collective name for 4 programs that are supported by 4 UN agencies. These are HINARI, which is an agriculture, which is a health program that is supported by WHO, AGORA, which is an agriculture program supported by FAO, OARE, which is an environmental program supported by UNEP, and RD, which is an innovation platform supported by WIPO. In itself, Research for Life is a public-private partnership of these 4 UN agencies, as well as Cornell University and Yale University and the International Association of Scientific, Technical and Medical Publishers. This program provides access to 4 different portals as highlighted in HINARI, AGORA, OARE and RD to make sure that access to relevant and current content is provided to researchers mainly in the developing and low-income countries. Research for Life partners with many of the leading publishers such as Elsevier, Wiley, Taylor and Francis, and many others to provide access to their content. This on the screen right now is the homepage for the Research for Life website, and you can get more information by going to the URL of Research for Life and reading up about what Research for Life is and what impact it is having in the research of many practitioners. So who is eligible for accessing the Research for Life programs? We've got 2 bands of eligibility depending on your country's GNI. The largest band of users of Research for Life come from sub-Saharan Africa, and those are shown in the blue color. And we also have some countries and institutions that access Research for Life from other countries across the world, as shown in the yellow color. If your institution belongs to what we call Group A countries, you have free access. So in other words, you only need to register for access to any one of the 4 programs and you have free access. However, if your institution is in the Group B countries, you have what we call low-cost access, where you would need to pay a very subsidized subscription for your institution per year. Your Research for Life is currently being accessed and used in more than 100 countries and at different levels of institutions, including national universities, research institutes, professional schools, teaching hospitals, governments, and national medical libraries as well. We also have other NGOs across the world also accessing Research for Life. For one to access Research for Life, you need to be registered as an institution and not individually. Once you are registered, you will receive a username and password, and we do advocate for all members of that institution or affiliated to that institution to have access to the username and password to be able to access the portals that provide you with the content. Today, I'm going to do an example, show you an example of how to use a specialized subject database called PubMed, which is in the health arena, and we are going to look at how we access PubMed using one of the Research for Life portals called Hinari. The first step for you to access PubMed would be for you to register for access to Hinari. Once you register for access to Hinari, you receive a username and a password. This is the home page of the Hinari portal. Once you are here, you would need to log in with the username and password, and it will take you to what we call the content homepage. Within Hinari itself, you can search for journals that are provided to Hinari as a program and for ebooks as well. You can also search for other free reference sources. However, today we're going to focus on how to search Hinari using a specialized database called PubMed. So once you're on the content homepage, right at the bottom of the screen as shown, you would click on that link and it will take you to the PubMed homepage. So right now we will be inside the specialized database of PubMed. So remember, this is a health database. PubMed allows you to search in two different ways, what we call a basic search and an advanced search to your top, right at the top. So once you are in the database, you are able now to pick those keywords that you have gotten through the different tools that we alluded to earlier. It could have been through the mind map, the concept clusters, or the tree structures. And like I said before, once you've got your keywords, you need to know how to talk to the database. And in this example, I've used the tool of a Boolean operator, and in my search, I'm going to look at malaria infections and Africa. In other words, I'm combining my search and refining my search to be specifically aligned to malaria infection content and that is specific to Africa. Once I do my search, the results page comes up, and in this specific example, I've got over 5,000 results. However, if you're not to the top right, it will also tell me how many are free full text and how many are available only to those who are subscribed to Hinari. In other words, some of the content that is only provided to Hinari could be accessible to your institution, but at a subscription. However, because I'm accessing this content or this database through Hinari, I'll have access to the content free of charge. So that is one of the advantages of using the Research for Life programs. In this example, I will endeavor to show you some of the relevant things or important things that will enable you to know how to now then pick the best literature for your research. The first feature that I would want to allude to as examples of things to look out for once you do your search in a database is looking at my right-hand side, where we're looking at the relevance. Once you get into most of the database, you will be able to sort your results by relevance. Another key feature is to also sort your results by year of publication. So that is represented by the second graph. This is especially important, especially in the area of clinical health, where we need to have current content. So you could actually sort your results by year of publication, and that again limits the number of results and refines your search to make sure that you get the best content available. You can also refine your search by only including results with the keywords in the titles of those articles or ebooks. Again, you can also look at what specific range you have within your articles. So in other words, your article types. So if you look to the left, right at the top, you've got different types of articles. You could have clinical trials, reviews, guidelines, and so forth. So these are important to note if you are using a specific database. Another very key tool that we need to be aware of as we are using a database is what we call specialized subject headings or controlled vocabulary, as I alluded to earlier. You will see in the box that I have highlighted where it says search details, it shows you how the database looked for this specific query. In this case, it used the different keywords that I keyed in: malaria, infections, and Africa. However, because PubMed is specialized, it also used medical subject headings, what we call MESH. And these medical subject headings are assigned, like I said before, by indexers of different institutions, and in this case of the National Library of Medicine. So these are specialized index terms that are assigned already to the content that is available in PubMed. So in this search, the search included the keywords as well as the MESH or the medical subject headings. Once you do a search in PubMed, you will notice that some of the articles are completely free because some of them could be available through open access journals, and some will give you what we call free PMC articles. If you click on the free PMC article, it will take you to the abstract. I'm going to move to the abstract to show us why reading the abstract is important to determine the literature that we need. Once you are in the abstract gives you different headings: the background, methods, results, and conclusion. This is a key feature and a new feature that was introduced to PubMed, especially because it enables us to make an evaluation of the literature that you have. This is important because it's quick to read and it enables you to make a decision on whether you want to go ahead and download the full text article of that abstract that you have. To the top right, you have two links, one that goes directly to the publisher or one that goes directly to a portion of screen that shows you that the content is available through Hinari. So you can click either of the two. However, this is not going to be uniform for all the searches that you have. So once we click in this example, I clicked on the full text, and it would take me to the full text of the article. In this case, it takes me to Biomed Central. In other words, I'm now accessing the servers of the publisher. Once I am here, I'm able to download the full text of the article, either in HTML if my bandwidth is low, or I can download it in PDF format. Going back to our search results, there are different ways or formats that we can access the search results. In this case, if you clicked on the drop-down menu, we get different formats. The first one being summary, which only gives you the citation details, that is the author details, the title, and the publication details of that result. However, you can also have summary with text that is part of the citation, part of the abstract. You can also get the results with all the abstract information listed and the text as well, or the midline content and so forth. This is especially important because it enables you to, again, to make a quick decision on which articles or ebooks you would want to use for your research. Some of the articles will have the button is shown in the red box. Is shown in the red box. So let me just make that. As shown in the red box. By clicking on the publisher's icon, you are again taken to the publisher's website where you'll be able to access the full text. However, if you've accessed PubMed through Hinari, you would click on the Hinari icon. Clicking on the publisher's icon might ask you to pay a fee because it would not recognize your login from the Hinari platform. Again, we can look at the abstract and the different topics that we look at or assess when we are making a decision on the literature that we need to access. Today, this is the end of my example that I've done with PubMed, and it was a short example to show us how we look for literature, the other key tools that we use, and the different things to look out for once you're inside a subject specialized database, and how programs such as Research for Life are providing access to low-income countries and developing countries for free, and how many of the leading publishers are partnering with such programs to make sure that researchers have access to content that is current. Thank you for listening in.
Thank you, Blessing. I'm hoping actually that we can make your informative presentation available to students and scholars as a way of identifying how to utilize PubMed and the features that you find within that database to locate the information they're looking for both rapidly and relevantly. So thank you, Blessing. We seem to have one question from the floor. I think it relates to your or to questions more broadly, so I'm going to come to those in a moment. But before I do that, I wonder if you could switch the screen back over to me, Valentina, please. Because I would like to introduce the final two presentations. We don't have time for those now, but and unfortunately there is a limitation with the GoToWebinar software, and that is that we cannot stream live videos. But we have two additional speeches today that fall under the topic, and these include the extended full version of Dr. Laura Camfield's presentation, which was abridged and shown first on day one. But the longer version of her presentation alludes to critical pedagogies and factors that you need to take into account when developing capacity development programs. And then we move on to Enrique Mendezabal. He is actually the founder of On Think Tanks. I'll show you that in a moment. He's an independent researcher and advisor specializing in research communication. So I'm just going to move over on Think Tanks. I hope that you can see it now. And this is a great site that will enable you to think about how to improve or enrich your research communication strategies. It looks at lots of the themes around learning, but also looks at different research methods and tools that you can use. So I will recommend that you have a look at both of these videos. They're highly informative, and they are available through our learning management system. Now we have almost run out of time, but I'd like to address the final two comments, and I believe we still have some of our speakers with us if you would like to to ask a question of the panelists today, you are most welcome to at this point. We will aim to close it in the next 5 minutes. But there's a question here from Stephen, and I think this relates to Inas's presentation. So Anne, if you could be ready to respond. He's asking, how do you organise the mentoring of early researchers or young career researchers in publishing? He would really love to know and benefit for himself and for his university. So perhaps you could speak to that question, please, Anne. Do we still have Anne with us? Well, what I can tell you, I think Anne probably answered this question earlier, so perhaps we could just recap. There is this, as they've termed, a dating service where individuals sign up, and it's more of a matching service, shall we call it that, where researchers sign up. They can either assign themselves the role of a mentor or mentee, and they go to the author aid site, log in either as a mentor or a mentee, and it's at this point that your relationship could commence, either with a mentor or a mentee. Now, I'm not clear whether there is an institutional approach. It did seem to be very much focused on the individual. So, but I can clarify that with Anne later and let you know individually, Stephen. So I hope that responds to your question. I have another question here from Stephen Owino, and he says, I'm currently a PhD student in a local university in Kenya, and I realize that publishing is not only a way of selling a scholar's ideas, but also a way of generating information that's necessary for policy making. I hope Aura will provide this necessary platform for young researchers of the future. And that's a great comment to end on. Thank you, Stephen. Definitely, as you can see, Aura is a program that promotes an interdisciplinary shall we say, collaborative and networked approach to looking at our challenges in terms of strengthening research capacity. There are many service providers in the landscape. We've seen some of those today. They are partners, and we work all together to tackle the need to enhance research capabilities with our partners across the world. So there are a number of services that we can, through the Aura program, provide access to, but we would never, for instance, try to replicate the good work of our partners, as this is not sustainable, as Anne has already mentioned. Sustainability is absolutely critical in the work that we do. So if you would like us to put you in touch with our partners, or find a way through which areas in which won't be covered in the Aura program could be covered by other capacity development providers, then please do let us know. I now have the link from Linda. Thank you very much, to her paper, which I will send to you all. I'm hoping that comes up before we close. And it looks like we have Anne back. I may not have done a very good job of explaining author aid, so please do come in, Anne, if you have something to mention now. I can also say that Maria would like to thank Blessing for her presentation. She said that that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Blessing. So we've come to the end of our webinar today. It was quite a long one, so thank you for staying with us. It will be available through the Learning Management System and also on our YouTube channels, on the IDS website page as well. And I'm hoping that we can ensure that this type of event will continue, especially through the Aura program. You will be invited to complete a survey at the end of this transmission. And just to echo something that Linda said earlier, very much in capacity development programs, we're learning as we go along, and what we're learning is what works in the context. So your feedback is incredibly useful to us. We've used a range of formats for this three-day event. We'd be very interested to see what worked for you and how we could improve our learning outputs and provisions in the future. So please do fill in the survey. It should take no more than 10 minutes, probably 5. But thank you to our panelists today for such an enriching and informative series of discussions and presentations, and thank you all for your attendance. Goodbye.